Nightcast learns an intense effort is underway to bring Larry Eiler's alleged accomplice to justice. In tonight's exclusive top story, Nightcast Adam Shapiro reports police want to reopen some of the Eiler murder cases based on the killer's deathbed confessions.
Good afternoon, and welcome to True Crime Mysteries. If you're new to the channel, hello and welcome, and if you're returning, welcome back. First, I'd like to remind you that if you could give this video a like and comment with your thoughts down below, that would be much appreciated as it helps the channel to grow. And if you're not subscribed to the channel, go ahead and click the red button because I make more content like this, and hit the little bell icon so you get notified when I post because I'm bad at keeping a regular schedule. Today, we're discussing 3 unidentified does who have recently been identified. Let's get into it. Number 1. Brad Doe. On October 18, 1983, a middle-aged couple were out gathering mushrooms in Lake Village, Indiana, when they came across an abandoned farm. There, they discovered shallow graves that contained the bodies of 4 deceased young men who had been drugged and stabbed. 2 of the men were quickly identified as Michael Bauer and John Bartlett, but the identities of the other 2 men remained a mystery. They soon became known as Brad Doe and Adam Doe, or the Newton County John Does. Adam Doe was a young black man between 15 and 18 years old. He had died sometime between 1982 and 1983 and still has yet to be identified. Brad Doe was described as a Caucasian male between 17 and 23 years old who died between the years of 1981 and 1983. While it would take years for Brad Doe to be identified, it didn't take as long to identify his murderer as serial killer Larry Eiler. Also known as the Highway Killer or the Interstate Killer, Eiler was already in police custody as a suspect in a series of murders when Brad Doe's body was discovered. Eiler died in prison in 1994 from AIDS-related complications while on death row for the murder of 15-year-old Danny Bridges. In a posthumous confession, it was revealed that Eiler murdered at least 21 young men. Years passed without any successful leads on Brad Doe's identity. Then, in 2019, the Newton County Coroner's Office and Rebecca Goddard, the Newton County Chief Deputy Prosecutor, reached out to the nonprofit DNA Doe Project for assistance. They worked with the University of North Texas Center for Human Identification to obtain a DNA extraction from the unidentified remains. They then ran a family reference samples comparison on the DNA, which compares the DNA against DNA samples provided by the family members of missing people. In January of 2021, Brad Doe's DNA sample was sent off to Hudson Alpha Discovery for more genome sequencing, and in March of 2021, Sabre Investigations began their bioinformatics work. They developed a DNA profile to upload to GEDmatch, a website used for genetic genealogy research, and found a potential match. To confirm the match, investigators connected with Brad Doe's possible relatives, who voluntarily submitted their DNA samples to the database. It was a 99.59% match. After over 37 years, the Newton County Coroner's Office was finally able to identify Brad Doe by his true name, John Ingram Brandenburg, Jr. John, often called Johnny by his mother, went missing from Chicago, Illinois in 1983 and was 19 years old at the time of his death. The last time his family saw him, he was leaving their home to visit a friend. Rebecca Goddard, the Newton County Chief Deputy Prosecutor involved in the case, said, "While my heart breaks for this family, I'm thankful that they finally have some of the answers they've waited so long for, and I hope this brings them peace." Number 2. Christy Crystal Creek Doe. In early September 1985, a bear hunter in Missoula County, Montana, came across the skeletal remains of a woman. When police arrived on the scene, they couldn't find any clothing or personal items in the area that could help identify her, but they determined that she had died from 2 gunshot wounds and had been deceased for about a year. The unidentified woman was then referred to as the Christy Crystal Creek due to the crime scene's close proximity to Crystal Creek. Throughout the years, the case was investigated by the Missoula County Sheriff's Office and armchair detectives alike, drawing attention due to its possible connection to serial killer Wayne Nance, who operated in the area during that time. The police spent years working with a forensic anthropologist and a forensic odontologist to solve the case. They also searched through missing person databases in the US and Canada, but they could never identify her. Then, in early 2001, the Missoula County Sheriff's Office received financial assistance from the Montana Department of Justice's Sexual Assault Kit Initiative. They then joined together with Ortham Labs to conduct a forensic genealogy investigation into the remains, which determined that they belonged to someone from the Lucas family tree in Spokane, Washington. After several interviews, they confirmed their identification by DNA testing several of the Lucas family members. Finally, they were able to positively identify Christy Crystal Creek Doe as 23-year-old Jeanette Lee Lucas. Jeanette was a mother from Spokane, Washington. She had been missing for years and was last seen in Idaho in the summer of 1983. Her son, who was 5 years old at the time of his mother's disappearance, had dedicated much of his adult life to finding her. In a news release in May 2021, Detective Captain Dave Conway with the Missoula County Sheriff's Office said, "We cannot rest on our success of having finally identified Jeanette. We must now seek justice for Jeanette. Our focus has changed from who is Christy Crystal Creek to what happened to Jeanette Lucas." Detective Marta Timmons says Jeanette could have been a victim of serial killer Wayne Nance, as she was found in an area he often hung out in. Nance was known as the Missoula Mauler during the 1970s and 80s. He is believed to have killed 6 people, though he was never convicted of his crimes, as he was killed in 1986 after attacking a couple in their home. He was shot during the attack and died in the hospital on September 4th, 1986. Jeanette's remains were found near other Jane Does, Debbie Deer Creek, who was later identified as 16-year-old Marcella Sherry Bachman, and Betty Beavertail, later identified as 15-year-old Devona Nelson. Both were victims of Nance. Police are currently investigating Jeanette's death. While she was found in Montana, she did not live there, and there were no records of her visiting there. They have shared a picture of Jeanette with the public in hopes that someone may have seen or known her in the summer of 1983 to 1984. They are investigating all new information as well as evidence and reports from Nance's case files to confirm if there's a link to Jeanette's murder. Jeanette's family released a statement of her case saying not only was she a mother, but she was also a daughter, a sister, an aunt, a friend, and now a grandmother to 4 beautiful children. We are grateful to finally be able to bring her home to us, as well as bring Jeanette the peace and rest she so deserves. Number 3. The Kern County Jane Doe. The Kern County Jane Doe was found on July 15, 1980, in a Kern County almond orchard just north of Bakersfield, California. Police determined that she had been sexually assaulted and stabbed to death the day prior. In a description of the victim, police said that she was either Hispanic or Native American, with shoulder-length brown hair, brown eyes, and colored tattoos, which were uncommon for women at the time. The Kern County Sheriff's Office suspected that their Jane Doe might have been picked up at a nearby bar in Lemoore called Ruby's, which was 75 miles from where she was found. Police began investigating the Jane Doe case immediately, collecting her fingerprints and looking into who she could be. But since they couldn't find any information on her and never received an inquiry connected to her, her case went cold for decades.
She was the victim of a homicide. She really looked like somebody someone would miss.
Regardless of whether or not you know the identity of the victims, they were still victims.
Everybody deserves to have their name returned to them.
It was like boom, boom, boom. It was like a domino effect.
Then, in 2013, DNA from underneath Kern County Jane's fingernails were matched to serial killer Wilson Shawist, who was already serving a life sentence in prison for robbery, kidnapping, and rape. Shawist was also matched to a Ventura County Jane Doe who was found in a high school parking lot in Thousand Oaks, California, within a few days of the Kern County Jane Doe. In 2018, Shawist was convicted of the 2 murders and sentenced to life in prison. Senior Deputy District Attorney John Barrick said, "It never really mattered to me that we didn't know their identity. What we could prove absolutely is that they were people, and I think this is just another example of why, regardless of whether or not you know the identity of the victims, they were still victims. Victims of a horrible crime, and they died in a horrible way, all alone, and no one knew, and those investigators never gave up." Ventura County then reached out to the Kern County and suggested looking for a genealogy match for their Jane Doe. The Kern County Sheriff's Coroner Division Chief, Don Ratliff, contacted the DNA Doe Project for assistance with the case, requesting genetic genealogy research to identify the woman. Genealogy work officially began in May of 2019, and although the Kern County Jane Doe's DNA had broken down over the years, they were able to find usable DNA data and upload the DNA profile to GEDmatch. Through their research, they determined that Jane Doe was a descendant of the Indigenous First Nations people of Canada, likely from the Cree Nation in Alberta, Manitoba, or Saskatchewan. Unfortunately, First Nations people are very underrepresented in most DNA databases, making it even more difficult for missing people within their community to be identified. To help in their research, a composite photo of the Kern County Jane Doe and details on her Cree Nation origins were shared as part of a Facebook campaign by the DNA Doe Project. A family member recognized the photo, and after reading about her likely origins as a First Nations people, they knew exactly who it was. The woman, Violet Soosay, knew it was her aunt Shirley Ann Soosay. She had been searching for her for nearly 40 years. Violet said that her aunt was very meticulous and was a creature of habit. She would send them Christmas and birthday cards every year until 1980 when they suddenly stopped. Her grandmother told her that something must have happened and that they had to go and look for her. They searched hospitals, bars, parks, and graveyards over several years, but found nothing. When Violet's mother fell ill, she was ready to take a break from looking for her Aunt Shirley. But then, just a few days later, she saw the composite photo on Facebook. She then connected with the DNA Doe Project, and they were able to use her DNA and genetic genealogy to confirm a match. Violet had promised Shirley's biological mother that she'd keep looking for Shirley and bring her home, and she did. On April 23, 2021, during the Crimes Victims' Rights Week, the Kern County Sheriff's Coroner and the DNA Doe Project publicly announced they'd identified the Kern County Jane Doe as Shirley Ann Soosay. According to the DNA Doe Project, Shirley was one of the first Indigenous does to be identified using genetic genealogy. On the success of the case, Chief Coroner Ratliff said, "This is not about solving crime, although it may be a byproduct. This was about finding a family who had missed her, but did not know where to look." For now, the search for Ventura County's Jane Doe identity continues. According to the information given to law enforcement, the Ventura County Jane Doe was hitchhiking near the College of the Sequoias and was abducted in Visalia, California. The DNA Doe Project and law enforcement are hopeful that they'll soon be able to give her back her name. Well, that is it for this video. As always, please give this video a thumbs up if you like the content and subscribe for more if you haven't already. If you've done all that and want to support me in the channel, we have channel membership and Patreon to get early access, members-only content, and more. We also have merch and other goodies in the description box, as well as links to all my socials. But until then, I will see you all in the next one. Bye for now.